Okay, we'll get started. I'll pray real quick and we'll just jump into it. God, thank you for today. Thank you for all the people here. I just pray that today we're able to worship you, Lord, just in spirit and truth. The things that we say, the things we do with our minds, God. We just pray that we have a good rest of the day as well and a good beginning to the week this week. And we just love you, Lord. Thank you for all that you do for us. And we pray this in your name. Amen. Okay. Well, this week is the last one, so kind of bittersweet. Yeah, it's the final week of Apologetics. Yeah, so it's the last week. It's been 8 weeks. Hopefully it's been good, I hope, for you. It's been kind of a crazy journey. I know when I do apologetics, I always get... I don't have a good word for it. It's a roller coaster for me. There's good, there's bad, there's some crazy, there's some confusing, there's all kinds of stuff. And I know it was kind of risky trying to do an 8-week class and do a different theory each week and run through it. And I knew when I was designing the class that it was going to be kind of maybe not the most popular decision to go, my main point in the class isn't necessarily for you to walk out going, I understand everything, but just for me to go, hey guys, going in. The main point of the class was really for me to go, I just want you guys to be hungry or get thirsty for more. Just to go, okay, there's answers, there's stuff out there. I know that it's okay to ask questions, and I at least know now some of what the answers are. And if not the total answer, I at least know where to look. I at least know where to start diving in and to start searching for some of the answers. So I know that might not be necessarily the most popular decision, but I think it was one I wanted to try because I just wanted to let you guys know and just kind of like show you that there was this like deep end that exists and this place that you could go and just kind of give you the freedom to dive in. And that being said, once this is the last week, I'm not like disappearing forever, so it's not like you'll never see me again. So if something comes up and you don't know about it, or you have a question, or you're looking for a book, or whatever it may be, I'm still going to be here. So I'm usually with the middle school kids, but my email's on the website if you're an email person. So feel free to use me as a reference or a contact if you need that. I'm not going to just be like walled off and like, sorry, you're on your own now. Have fun, guys. Go swim. That'll be great. But I do want to say we've been going through a different theory each week. The first week was kind of introduction, and then we went through worldviews, and we talked about God and science. Are they compatible? Are they not? We went into the cosmological argument, the morality argument, and then to resurrection, kind of the history behind that, the argument there. And then we got into the cosmological, the ontological, and some of those other arguments. Last week we just did the ontological. This one, I'm not really going to talk about a theory so much. If you want to call it a theory, I just call it living apologetics is what I'm talking about today. But I've said this in the past when we spoke about worldviews, so way back towards the very beginning of the class, and we talked about worldviews and morality. As much as I do love apologetics, and I do, because it has helped me personally in my faith. I've told you guys about, I was at this crossroads where I went, I can't do it anymore. I'm done. Time to walk away. I can't support it. And apologetics is what got me through and kept me on the right side. Apologetics is like why I'm here, and that's why I'm really passionate about it. That's why I enjoy teaching it. That's why I think you guys should learn it, maybe not just for yourselves, and I hope it does help yourselves, but there might be someone else along the way that you come across, and it's just good to have an answer for them. So I'm very passionate about it for that reason. But as much as it's helped me in my personal belief and struggling with God and trying to find answers and asking these hard questions I didn't even know I was allowed to ask in the first place and be a Christian, I don't necessarily think the most important thing when it comes to reaching others or helping others see God or teaching them about who God is, I don't think the most important thing is necessarily the arguments or some of the things that we talked about. I think your apologetic, so your defense. When we talk about Paul is talking to the people, his church, and he says, always be ready to give an answer for the faith that you have, that word apologetic, that defense for your faith. I think your best defense isn't necessarily the words you say, isn't necessarily the arguments that you wield, the apologetic, theories and philosophies that you have tucked back in your mind to throw out to someone. I think your best defense is the way that you live your life and just love other people. And some of that's hard to admit and say, but it's true. When I think about it, that's what I believe. Philippians 1:27, Paul's talking to the church of Philippi. He says, above all, you must live your life as citizens of heaven. So conduct yourselves, act in a manner worthy of the good news about Christ. And then whether I come to see you again or only hear about you, I'll know that you're standing together with one spirit, one purpose, and fighting together for the faith, which is the good news. And Jesus, when he's talking to his disciples in John, when you're in chapter 13, verse 35, he says this to him. He says, your love for one another will prove to the world that you're my disciples. I think the way that you love people and live your life might just be the best defense, the best apologetic that you can have, that you can give to someone else. I've told you the story of Greg, but when I was living in Joplin a couple of years ago, I worked at a music store. It's called Palin Music Centers. I was a salesman, kind of just sold everything, guitars, amps, trumpets, whatever you can think of, pianos, keyboards, all that stuff. The manager there, he was kind of a Christian. I don't know how good, I hate kind of saying that how good, but how faithful he was to the faith. I don't know if it was just nominally, like he said, yes, I'm a Christian, but never acted on it, or whether he was really serious. But I knew that he believed. He went to church pretty occasionally. He knew what I was doing. I was going to school to be a pastor, to do this. I was getting my degree at Ozark Christian College. And he knew kind of through just the course of me working there and seeing some of the stuff that I would read or some of the things I would watch that I liked apologetics. It was just one of my hobbies, things I liked doing. I was passionate about it, and he knew that. We never talked about it per se, but he just knew from being around me that that was something I enjoyed. I still remember one day Greg comes out of his office and he walks up, and it was a slow day. There wasn't anybody in the store yet. And he just looks at me, he's like, Rob, I got a question. I was like, yeah, Greg, what's up? He said, well, I got this friend, and he's been a Christian for a long time. He's been a Christian for years and years and years. He teaches at a Christian school, so his job is to teach young kids about the Bible. He believes in that. Obviously, he goes to the church. The school is a church too, and he attends there. And been a great guy of faith. And he goes, well, just recently he decided he was done. He just decided he couldn't do it anymore. I don't know all the reasons, or that he told Greg, but he goes, he's just done. He can't believe in God. Says he doesn't believe in God anymore, and he quit his job at the school. He's not going to church anymore, and he just dropped. He's out. He goes, well, what do I say to him? And so, the first thing that goes through my head, of course, is okay, we got the morality argument. So we got this going, and then I could tell him about the cosmological argument, or if you want to get crazy, the ontological, and there's all these other things. And I start running through all these arguments in my head, and I'm thinking, man, I got this book that I could tell him about. Oh, this one's good and this one's good, and I'm running through all these, and oh man, there's these videos that I really like. I just saw this one. This is new, and I'm thinking through all this, and all of a sudden I just kind of stop. I'm like, wait a second. Just kind of pump the brakes a little bit. Because I've told you, when we talked about worldviews, behind every worldview, behind every belief, there's a person. And the temptation is to reduce people to just these set of beliefs, to reduce the person to just their philosophy, to just their worldview. But behind the person, there's a story of how they got there. There's this progress of how they started believing what they believe. Sometimes people will just be belligerent. Sometimes they'll be mean because they just really enjoy that. Sometimes people will argue because they like arguing. But I thought sometimes there's just a lot more going on than the surface level, what meets the eye, what I'm coming face to face with. So I just stopped and I said, Greg, I said, a lot of times I found that there's something else going on. You can look at things intellectually and just go, this doesn't make sense. I just don't see how God could exist. This intellectually doesn't line up, so I'm just going to jump the fence and hop over to the other side. that can happen, but 9.99999 times out of 10, I don't think that's always the case. It's usually not just a purely intellectual head decision where someone looks at the facts and weighs them and goes, nope, there's usually something else going on in the heart. So I said, Greg, is something else going on? Did something happen? Is there something recently that went on? And he just kind of got a little bit quieter, and he's like, well, he had a wife of like 20 some years almost, and she just left him. They divorced him. He's gone. So I stopped and I said, Greg, I can give you some good books to read. I can give you some stuff to tell him. I can tell you some really good arguments. I was like, but I think that's your problem. Maybe it's not so much that he had a problem up here and he was looking at, does God exist? And this finally came to this point where he's like, nope, he doesn't. I'm done. It was a guy who is going through a really rough time and is broken right now and is probably really, really angry and needed someone to be angry at. And so he's angry at God. Because how could God, if he's good, let that happen, right? You know, he went to church. Like, for goodness, he taught at a Christian school, right? He's doing good stuff. So why would this happen? And I can say this. As a man who grew up in the church, I had great, if I can call myself a man, we'll pretend that I am. As a guy who grew up in the church, my parents were awesome. They took me to everything. I was practically born in the church, dedicated as a young child. I went to we didn't miss Sundays. Always were at church every Sunday. I knew Sunday's church day. We would go on Wednesday nights, every choir thing, every barbecue and potluck and picnic and summer camp and day camp and VBS. We were at all of it, the CIYs, the men's conferences, everything. We went to it. And that was good because that helped shape me. It helped form me. It helped get me to where I am today. But I can tell you, I wouldn't be here standing in front of you as a pastor, as a person talking, or even as a Christian, I would say, if it wasn't for a person. I don't want to demean the events because those were important. I learned really good things at the events. I took things away from the events that I needed to learn. Like, I needed to be there and learn those things. I got baptized at a CIY when I was in 8th grade. I treasure those times and those moments that I spent growing up in the church. But the thing that actually kept me on the path, that kept me going forward, that kept me where I was, wasn't necessarily all the events that I went to. And it wasn't necessarily all the apologetic arguments that I learned. There was a moment where I was at a crossroads, and I 100% believe that if I hadn't found apologetics and learned it and started studying it, that I would have left the faith, or I would have just said, I'm done. But there was something else, too, that even kept me going further, that played a bigger part in my life and my role. And that was in college. There's a man named Wade. Wade was a missions professor at the college that I was attending there. And he was the missions pastor at the church that I was attending as well. I can still remember, like it was yesterday, exactly where I was when I got the phone call from him. I had prayed for like at least 2 years probably, like, God, please just give me a mentor, give me someone older. I had people my own age that I would meet with in the small group thing that you're supposed to do because it was the good Christian thing, and I had great friends that I was around and a good church that I was attending, but I just felt like, God, please, 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 I really need this. Give me someone, a mentor, someone older to pour into my life. And I remember I get this phone call. I was at my wife, it was my girlfriend at the time, her apartment. They had some friends over, and they're just watching TV, just hanging out. And I get a call, and I look. I don't recognize the number, but I answer it. I'm going, hello, and it's Wade. He goes, hey, this is Wade. I kind of know you from, I've seen you at church a little bit, and I'm a professor at the school. He said, I'm starting a small group for just a couple guys. Do you want to be a part of it? And I was like, yeah, I would love to. It totally changed my life. I said, okay. And Wade took me in. We got a small group, and he would just a couple of guys, and he would pour into us and teach us what it meant to be a man, what it meant to be a Christian, what it meant to be a pastor, what it meant to be a good husband. He invited me into his home. We would go there Sundays after church, and he would have this lunch, and we would all eat there. And over the years, our relationship grew and grew, and he started like bringing us into his family. He called me one of his kids. We would go and we'd eat family dinner every week, Tuesday nights, was family dinner night. And we'd go over to his house and just sit with his family at the table. And we'd eat dinner and we'd talk and laugh and cry and do all the fun stuff. And I needed a place to live later on. I was graduating college and kind of waiting on my wife to graduate too. So I was hanging around and working at a music store. And he let me live with them for a while. He just brought me in. You're one of the family. He would get coffee with me and we'd talk about stuff if I needed to know something, or if I had a question, or if I was struggling with something. He'd ask me, Rob, how are you doing with this? Is this going okay? How's it going? How are you and God doing? Because of my parents and Wade, probably the biggest two reasons that I'm here, that I am where I am. It wasn't the theories necessarily that got me to where I am, that pulled me through. They helped to get me out of this really bad spot, but they weren't the ones that walked alongside with me through the rest of it. Now, I've had a long journey with apologetics where I keep learning and digging and learning more. But it was people. It was just some dude who decided, I could love this kid. I'm going to love him. I'm going to show him what it means to be a Christian. I'm just going to walk alongside of him. That's what it was. Don't let that take away from apologetics, because I still think you need to learn it. Always be ready to give someone an answer for the faith you have. I 100% believe that you need to know that. That's one thing.
Can I ask, what was the difference that Wade done that your parents didn't do?
Oh, you're getting into some cool psychology stuff, but sometimes when you get through high school and middle school, you try to become your own person, and so there's a certain separation from your parents. My story goes a little longer, but it's really important to have someone that's like a third party who is still deeply rooted in the same beliefs that you can kind of also attach yourself to and will help guide you, because sometimes you have this jilted side towards parents, and not everyone, but the majority of people do, just because parents aren't perfect, as no one is. So that was one of the biggest things, and my parents were 5 hours away, so having someone present with me was huge. That's the big thing. But when it comes to the apologetics side, I think apologetics is a big head knowledge. There's where I have head knowledge and kind of the heart knowledge, the heart feel, so feelings versus intellect. You need to know apologetics, and here's why. I think it's one of the pillars of faith even. I really do. That helps sustain you, because we all know our emotions, our heart does this. And the things that I find that get me through the low moments are when I've trained this, and I know something about God. I know God is there. Even when I don't feel like he's there, I know he is, because that's who he is. That's who I've learned. And that's who intellectually I know God to be. So even when I don't feel like God's there, he's not listening to me, how could God let this happen? I still know God, being who he is in control. God, being creator, is over everything, which means he's always present. He means he knows exactly what I'm yelling to him or saying to him, or even the curse word I say when I stub my toe and don't think anyone can hear me. That doesn't really happen. That was just a good example. But he's there because that's who he is, because I know, because I've studied it. So there's these moments where we line up with our head and our heart, and things are really good, but then there's the moments where they pull away and they separate, and that's when you see a lot of people leave, is because I don't think they've trained this part, the brain, the head, the knowledge, where they go, I know that this is who God is, because this is who he has to be. This is who I've learned him to be. This is who I've studied. We just go, I don't really feel God anymore, and then we go to these really bad places, whether anyone else knows or not. Maybe it's just in your own head, but you go to these bad places, and that's what gets me through the valleys, the shadow of death, the dips in the emotions in the heart when you just don't feel God like we always do, is the head knowledge. And that's why I think apologetics is crazy important, super important. I think it's important because you can give someone an answer. Jesus is talking to the disciples right before he sends them all out to go do what? To evangelize, to tell people about him. He says, I want you to be as innocent as doves and as shrewd as vipers. It's Matthew 10:6. Keep your innocence. Don't stoop to anyone else's level. Remain holy, remain righteous, remain in me. But he's saying be smart, like train your brain, be shrewd, be wise. This is like a muscle. Flex it, work it for God's glory. And that way you have something like a pillar, something to hold you up, something to help you stand on, even when you're feeling like there surely can't be a God, right? Because I get in those moments. I know what it's like. Like, really? Could there be a God if there's... But I have this thing, this shrewdness, if that's what you want to call it, apologetics, something that I know that I can look to and stand on and go, no, there is a God. I may not feel it at the moment, but there is still God. He's still there. So be smart, be shrewd, but I want you guys to remember that you might just win more people. You might just convince more people that God is actually real, not by shouting philosophies in their faces, but maybe by washing their feet instead. So at the end of the day, at the end of all of the apologetics lessons, at the end of the class, I think your greatest apologetic, your greatest defense isn't the words you say, isn't the philosophies that you wield, isn't your perfectly knit and constructed arguments that you go up against someone. I think it might just be the actions that you take that back up the words you say. So don't just study apologetics, and you should. I think everyone should at least know, should have an answer, should be ready. Paul talks to Timothy, he says, watch your faith and your life and your doctrine closely. So know what you believe, know about God, know about apologetics. Because in doing so, you just might save yourself and the ones listening to you. That's a huge statement. But don't just study apologetics. Live it. Show it to someone. Show them through the way that you love, through the way that you walk alongside someone. Maybe someone wants to really just shout at you because they're mad at God, and it's not you so much they have a problem with. It's something else because there's something going on behind it. Be okay with that. Take the high road. Take the Jesus road, the narrow road. And I think when you do that, someone just might be lucky enough to follow you along and go, this might be real. Not because what they said was perfect and I couldn't find any, holes in their defense, but because they keep coming back and they act so different than everyone else in my life. And they might just start to wonder, why is that? And that's your conversation starter. That's where you get to come in and go, let me show you why it is. So don't study apologetics. Live it out. That's the end of my class. I know it's shorter, but I just want to say thank you for walking through the 8 weeks. I know it's been crazy. There's some crazy stuff, fun stuff. Hopefully you got something from it. I still do have resources if you want them. I do have notes, and I, being me, forgot to pass them out. So this will do you a whole lot of good at the end of the class, but you're welcome to it. So there's still notes, and again, I am not disappearing off the face of the earth or from the crossing. I'm still going to be here in the building every week. If you have a question, I'll do my best to answer it if I know it, or maybe I don't know it, but I can just tell you a place to find, or if you just, Rob, I read this book and this book, do you have another one? I'd love to help you out. I don't know what all is in store for future classes. There may be more on the line of apologetics, there may not. I know we're trying to figure that out as a staff and just what'll work best, and maybe you guys can have some input on what you would like to hear. So you can look out. There might be more stuff that's similar or somewhat related, but other than that, I just want to say thank you. I'll stick around if you got questions on anything, and if not, I know it's a little shorter, but you guys are free to mingle, free to go, and thank you.